Our guest today is Todd Creager, licensed clinical social worker. He helps couples and individuals move past the resistance to having the relationship and love they crave. His specialties include helping couples heal from infidelity and helping couples rekindle the passion and breaking free from their earlier toxic relationships. Find out more about Todd and his practice at toddcreager.com. Hi, Todd. Welcome to Savvy Business Radio. How are you today?
Good. Nice to be here.
I'm so happy to have you here. You're talking about a subject we've talked about a few times, but I think it's a very important subject, and that is relationships. You specialize in marriage counseling, sex and couple counseling. A lot of our audience are married couples, and we want to keep our marriages fresh and stay together for the long haul and deal with anything that might come up so we don't have to deal with possibly one day intimacy or infidelity issues, which you've also helped couples with a lot. Before we go to sharing all of that with the audience, delve in a little bit into your background. What brought you to working in this niche and helping couples?
Well, I started working as a therapist, and early in my career, maybe like 4 years into it, I took a marketing class, and the man asked us to look at who's coming to see me. Mm-hmm. And I was surprised. I wasn't even aware that 70% of the people I saw were couples. So I noticed I had this attraction for couples, and I had been married at the time for about 4 years. So, what happens is I'm probably working on my own issues and pulling people in. Mm-hmm. And I found that they were relevant to my own issues, probably, to be totally honest. Mm-hmm. And I was really helping couples, even a lot older than me, twice my age at that young age. So I just continued doing it, and I trained more, and I ended up now I train other therapists how to do couples therapy and sex therapy and how to deal with infidelity. So over the years, I just became more skilled, and I also found that even though so many people are pessimistic about marriage and passion, that I was helping people we get passion rekindled, and that was really why I got motivated to write my book, The Long Hot Marriage. That is not a fairy tale. People can have a long hot marriage, and so it's just something that I found I enjoy doing. I still enjoy. I've been doing it for 30 plus years. I just get excited to help couples. Some of the couples that come see me in my private practice are in really tough shape, but you can learn and you could heal. And I just love doing it and try to walk my talk in my own marriage. So it's all very purposeful to me, very meaningful.
Wow. This reminds for me, because I told you before the interview that Savvy was really started for my own self to help me with my business, help get the word out about it, build my own credibility, help people either personally or business-wise with their finances, because that's what I've been doing in corporate for many years. And then you start attracting to yourself most what you need to learn. And I find that's interesting in life. You're looking to help people, but you end up learning in the process, and it helps you grow as a person.
Yeah, well, what's funny is, especially early in my marriage, I started to go, man, I'm helping these couples. They're doing better than we are. I better start walking my talk even more. So it really had to keep me on my growing edge. I really felt I can't be a hypocrite. So it probably helped my marriage.
Well, now you've worked with a lot of couples. What have you seen as being some of the biggest indicators of things failing or being difficult for people to keep a relationship together? Are there certain elements that keep a healthy marriage?
Well, yeah, definitely. Here's what I say. I mean, there's lots of things that go on that could pull at the health of a marriage. Mm-hmm. I think one of the major things is lack of role models. That I really think that our parents and grandparents, and we're not blaming them, but they weren't very evolved in terms of how to handle, for example, emotional pain. So what we saw is how people deal with pain. And, emotional pain is inevitable. Mm-hmm. I'll be, you're married, and then this person says something that makes you hurt or angry. What do we do with it? Our parents and grandparents typically just reacted, just a series of fight or flight reactions. Mm-hmm. So when people don't know how to handle pain and stay connected at the same time, then they start to distance themselves from each other. And that, to me, is the number one thing, that we haven't had the role models to help us develop healthy connections and to stay connected through, the way I say it is through both heaven and hell. If we could stay connected, no matter what, the pain is not going to take away. We get through the pain and then we get to the good stuff. Yeah. But we oftentimes let pain separate us. So I guess the short answer to that is couples disconnect from each other because they don't know how to deal with the inevitable challenges that happen. That's probably the number one thing beyond anything else.
This recalls for me, Todd, early in my 20s, I used to have this idea, me and my girlfriends, we'll get a beautiful dress one day. My dad will walk me down the aisle and I'll have the perfect life. I think a lot of girls grew up with this idea that marriage was the cherry on top and everything will be perfect when we find the perfect guy. And, my mom and other older women tried to warn us and our young 20-year-old naivety that no, it's not quite that simple, that challenges come up and how do you stay the ground? And it's interesting that you mentioned that pain is sometimes the separating factor to couples disconnecting, because I remember my grandma and grandpa, my grandpa could be kind of abusive emotionally, screaming at my grandma a lot. And I remember her I remember seeing her face full of pain and thinking, wow, that's horrible. I don't like him. He's mean. And I remember thinking she would just hold the pain in and just like be a quiet, good little wifey. But as she got older, it was interesting. They both started to break down in their health, and something transformed in them. I don't know if they started to go through more talking or connectiveness, but they started to take care for each other in a deep way that I never saw when I was really little. Because as their bodies broke down and they got older, I saw that they were becoming real helpmates and real partners together. Even though earlier, when I was much younger, they were really mean to each other, now they were like really there for each other. And I thought that was a really nice transformation.
Yeah, people do that. They get better as time goes on, and we can. We can look at life in two ways. One is a fixed mindset, and the other is more of a growth mindset. And fixed mindset is I am who I am, and that's it. And growth mindset is we can always develop into better human beings. And I think committed relationship almost like beckons us to be better people. And we need to be on that growing edge to have this wonderful relationship. We can't rest too long. We have to. Another part of the answer to your question is that what happens is people get too safe and too secure, and they don't take chances. And I go, what's the most exciting thing about meeting your partner when in the beginning there's a risk to it? You take chances. You're not so secure. So what we have to do in a relationship is balance out the wonderful safety of a long-term relationship with newness and with novelty, and to create and to leave our comfort zones and try new things. So it's as long as we're willing to do that. I mean, if you think about it, there's, you and I were talking about the things you've done, the things I've done. Our success comes from risk, and it's no different with our interpersonal relationships, that there's certain risks. We need to risk showing a side of ourselves, risk something new, risk being rejected. We can't be staying in our comfort zones for too long, because then you have the picture of the man who comes home, puts on his TV, and is sitting there, and then the nights become the same routine day in, day out. Well, no, it's not going to be a good marriage if you do that.
Yeah. I think what I'm getting from you is that you really have to change up how you're doing your daily life, maybe add new things in, because if you're getting complacent, as I think I'm picking up, that you do the same thing every day and really nothing's growing, you really got to start to move it on up. How could you add novelty and newness as you did in the beginning of your relationship, where you were so excited? I remember me and my partner Brian, we used to have Saturday night dates, and I would get dressed up, put makeup on, and we'd usually have a date night here. But now we just sit in front of the TV, with our pajamas on it.
It's easy to do, and that's okay. But not all the time, right? We want to spice it up or do something different, and in the beginning it comes so naturally. I always say we're hormonally driven to do that, and the chemistry is created for us. Because I'm a professor at USC, and I talk about neurobiology and all that, and the different stages of love. The first stage, basically the chemistry that we automatically have does it for us. Higher testosterone, dopamine. But then as we settle in, actually serotonin takes over, which is very calming and soothing. So we need to then create our chemistry, create the dopamine, create a little novelty. So whereas in the beginning we didn't have to work at it, it just came natural because it was risky and we fell in love. Now to stay in love, we got to create chemistry, and we can do that. And it's the same, like I said, working with people who have infidelity, typically it started, there's lots of factors what goes into that, but the number one thing is disconnect on whatever level and not creating enough positive intensity between each other.
Positive intensity. So what is the factor or moment for a lot of the couples you've met who one day say, one day I just said, I'm going to do it? I mean, how do they rationalize for yourself that I'm going to go there and cheat? Or is it something that people just end up falling into because, like, when they fall in love, they're really not thinking, they're feeling?
You're right about that they're not usually thinking, they're not using the cortex brain. It's coming from that other part of their brain. But, I think there's lots of reasons. And, I go into this in like, I have a teleseminar coming up this Wednesday. I didn't even think about bringing that up, but it's on infidelity, and it's on my website. And, what I talk about is there's 10 different factors that can contribute to people having affairs. I'll give you, because we don't have time to go through all of them, I'm sure, but just an example. Let's say you have a person who grew up and had a critical parent. You're never going to amount to anything, which is actually a client in my head that I'm talking about as I speak to you. And they ended up having a sense of inadequacy, and they want to feel like they're good enough. And then they meet the woman of their dreams, and they're having a great time, and he feels so wonderful. He feels great. And then they have a kid, and then they have a second kid, and she's kind of busy, and she's working. And she doesn't praise him like she used to because, that's just what happens. And then he goes to work and he finds this woman who says to him, a coworker goes, wow, you're so attractive and you work so well. I love the way you do. And get a little compliment. And it's a slippery slope at that point because his need for affirmation takes over. So sometimes it's not a sexual reason. It's actually a psychological reason. So affirmation. Sometimes there are people that come to me, I realize that the issue is fear of abandonment, that they're so afraid of abandonment, they sabotage the relationship. It's almost as if they're saying, okay, I'm gonna screw this up before you abandon me. It's not conscious, but I've seen things like that lead to it. And of course, what I do when I work with people like that, I help them understand the underlying dynamics, that infidelity is a symptom, and that they need to find better solutions to this psychological issue. That's not going to work.
Wow, because I've heard people say, and this one guy who's a business guy says, people say to me, oh, everything in my life is perfect except for my business. And he said, no, I can guarantee you, if you have a problem and things are not growing in your business or it's falling apart, usually it's a symptom of other things falling apart in your business. And I've heard the same thing about marriage. If your marriage is falling apart, most likely there's other parts of your life that are also not perfect. And
absolutely.
And that's exactly what you're talking about. You might be dealing with underlying abandonment issues or underlying other issues that haven't been dealt with, and it comes out in different parts of your life.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what happens. We end up reenacting the thing that we haven't dealt with. That's why what I do, people look at therapy, thank God these days, a little differently than they used to. Therapy doesn't mean you're broken. It's just a way of getting in touch with parts of you that you didn't before and helping you recognize the fears that you have, how you close up. People guard themselves and they don't love certain parts of themselves. Like there's like a little kid in some of these people I see that needs a little attention. Like the little boy and the man that I just mentioned who felt not good enough needs a little attention. But instead what he did, and what a lot of people do, is they go, okay, I'm going to overcompensate. I'm going to be really successful in my business world, but ends up sabotaging his relationship. So I see that all the time. And the good news is, though, I know that some people will come and say to me, I'm never going to be with him. He cheated on me. But a lot of people, it's not that simple. They have a lot of investment, whether they have kids or not, and they want to work it out, but they don't know how to work it out. And so that's what I do. And I help them work it out and realizing that, it's a tough thing, infidelity. I always say it's a scar on the relationship, but look, I have a few scars, but I'm still beautiful. I still have a nice, I have a nice face, I have a little scar in my little part of, but we go on, and relationships can learn, and people end up oftentimes not saying infidelity is a good thing. It's not, but they could actually become
stronger,
have a better relationship after the crisis than before. because it presents opportunities they didn't have before.
We'll be right back after these messages.
Think back to when you started your business. You had a dream. You had boundless passion. You wanted to create something different. There was a problem, and you were going to solve it. Being an independent retailer is rewarding, but challenging, and there's a lot more to it than you ever imagined. Well, Lightspeed is here to help. With 45,000 customers around the world, we've helped countless entrepreneurs nail the business side of retail so they can spend time doing what they're passionate about. Join us for a 6-week speaker series featuring a curated panel of experts that will answer some of retail's toughest questions and give you the edge you need to stay competitive. You have a passion, and we have a passion for technology inspired by you. Visit lightspeedhq.com/speaker-series to learn more.
That's interesting you say that they could be stronger or grow deeper after a crisis, because a friend of mine just actually, her husband a couple of years ago got diagnosed with cancer, and they went through it all and whatever. And the interesting thing is, my friend said, I thought I was totally committed before this whole crisis, but we're so much deeper, like 10 times deeper after the crisis than before. And we thought we had a strong relationship.
Wow.
But it goes to show you that sometimes you think you're really strong, but this crisis can bring you to an even deeper level than you could have even ever imagined.
That is great. Yeah, there's actually a phrase called post-traumatic growth, PTG, post-traumatic growth, and that's a great example that through his cancer they got closer. I've seen people have cancer and they were kind of defensive and not open to people, and they go through this experience and they survive it and they start thriving because they're more open to people. They've accepted that they're not so overly independent anymore. So I've seen things like that. So whether it's cancer, like you said, or even infidelity, that these are painful things. We don't wish it on anybody, but through crises, oftentimes there can be growth, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. And what have you found working with couples has been the really most difficult part of working through infidelity? What was the hardest part of working through that?
That's a great question. Of course, it's I feel for the person betrayed. It's how do I trust this person again? I mean, this is so, you have this person who is so, so invested in the relationship and thinking this is what's going on, and they get blindsided by this discovery of a text or whatever. There's so many ways to get discovered now, and they're just devastated. And so how do you get the trust back? And that's probably the most challenging thing where I've come across. And yet the success there comes when they start to see that whatever was not being done, the positive behaviors that weren't there before are starting to happen on a consistent basis. And I say, you have reason to hope. And of course, there's no 100% certainty, but, I've had couples where there's been infidelity and I go, this person's shown you, let's say it's not always the man. Let's say it's the woman. Let's use the woman this time.
Okay.
Maybe she's the one that had the extramarital affair, but she has worked through her issues. It's obvious she's worked through issues. Their behaviors are different. Their communication's better. And I say to him, look, there's always a risk, but I would say she's a better risk than some standard person on the street now.
Yeah, that you don't know at all.
Did it, she learned. Yeah, she's learned. She's probably a better risk. So at some point, at the right time, I asked the person who was betrayed, drop your guard, jump all in. just don't deprive yourself of this of love. Yeah. But again, timing is very important, and I'm very sensitive to. That's there's a process that has to happen when you're betrayed, but that's the most challenging thing is how do you get that trust back if the person's really and obviously if there isn't enough change, I've seen people where the person who's done the cheating hasn't really made enough changes. The relationship hasn't changed, and I say, look, I don't see it as a good risk right now. Let's keep going at this point if you want to. But I'm very honest with my couples, but sometimes I might try to coax them. Take a chance. And of course, there's no guarantees. But there's good risk and there's bad risk.
I get that. It's interesting because I had a friend several years back who said, I didn't mean to go cheat. It wasn't like I said out one day, I'm going to cheat on my husband. No, it was that she wasn't feeling loved and this sort of like, I matter anymore. And he was always out working, coming home, turning on the TV, whatever it is, just disconnected, as you were mentioning earlier. And it was just that situation at work where this guy's like, oh, you look so pretty. You're such a beautiful woman, just making her feel great that she started to consider it and ended up going that route. Yeah, and it must be really tricky for you because then I'm thinking the hurt person's like, well, no, it's not my fault at all because I'm not the one that cheated. I mean, is there kind of hard for the other side to take kind of a little bit of their part in it sometimes?
That is such a great question, Christina. Mm-hmm. I oftentimes, first thing I always have to do, and for your listeners, I mean, if anybody's in this situation, the betrayed person has to come first. Their pain has to come first. Mm-hmm. They need to be acknowledged. But of course, here's what I'll say to people. I go, look, this person, again, let me assume just for language, let's say the guy cheated. I said, this man who cheated, your husband is 100% responsible for that decision he made. Mm-hmm. He is 100% responsible. However, you both are responsible for creating a better marriage that will raise the chance of having a wonderful marriage and tremendously lower the chance of this happening again. And so even though he's totally responsible for that decision, you're both responsible for making it better. Something like that, I'll say. Yeah. Infidelity is not just a physical relationship. It could be anything that leads to a secret, right? So, if a person is even doing some messages and, flirting or whatever, and they're keeping it from their partner, it's the secret that's the problem. So even if they don't physically have sex or sexual intercourse or anything, it's still, to me, infidelity that they're hiding, and it's the secrecy that's the problem for the marriage.
And here's the thing: for women, we're more emotional based, and we need that kind of loving through emotional stuff. So people, like a coworker a couple years ago was starting, and it was just that thing you mentioned. She had an old high school flame contact her, and she was in a relationship. She wasn't married, but she was in a very serious relationship, and she was talking to this guy and lighting up as she talked to me. I said, wait a second, what's going on here?
Right.
Are you trying to get into this guy? And she's like, no, it's nothing like that. We're just talking. And I'm like, yeah, be careful. Because you think, oh, he just gave me compliments. We're talking about old days. And before you know it, those old days turn into meeting up for a drink and then maybe going further. Yeah. Even if you don't go further, the point is that, if you're married and you're having these nice conversations, they're not with your husband, they're with another man. And he's making you feel good instead of you working with your husband, find out why you don't feel good in the marriage. It's kind of an escape.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
This has been so fascinating, Todd. We could talk for hours about this. It's so fascinating. But I don't want us to leave without folks finding out where they can find out more about you. You have a wonderful book, and you must mention to them also your wonderful The Little Black Book on Infidelity, as well as your new infidelity cure. Share that all with them.
Sure. Well, my website is toddcreager.com, TODDCREAGER.com. And to get any products, you could just do Todd Creager, TODDCREAGER.com/store, and it goes right to my products. And so the products I have that about infidelity, that is my new one, I'm excited about that, is like the Little Black Book of Infidelity is a nice introduction to what I talked about with you and a lot more actually. But the infidelity cure is really, it doesn't take the place of a therapist. I'm not saying that it does, but it really is like a self-help program for couples and it's interactive, and it's for both the person who was betrayed and the person who did the betrayal. And it's 6 videos and a workbook. It's really, I'm so happy with the way it turned out, and it really is a step-by-step way of going from understanding why a person cheated and to get in touch with the factors, to how to create new solutions to that, to how to get the trust back, to how to go from just surviving to thriving, and then how to prevent infidelity in the future. And so it's really like it's a great affordable way of getting help. And even if you have, whether you have a therapist or not, it's an adjunct that'll speed the therapy along.
Yeah.
And and then some of the other products there are, like I mentioned, my book, The Long Hot Marriage, and I have another book that came out in 2015. That's an Amazon bestseller called Love, Sex, and Karaoke, 52 Ways to Ignite Your Love Life.
Love that.
So I have a bunch of other products too there, all under the store, toddcreager.com/store. And of course, I do virtual therapy and counseling and coaching. I do it through Zoom or Facebook, sometimes Skype, and so I could be accessible to people that aren't right in my geographical location as well.
That's great.
So, yes.
Yeah. This is such a deep subject. I mean, really, you could just spend hours talking about communication alone in relationships. So, yeah, I mean, we've just touched on just the top of the iceberg here. But everyone, please go check it out today to toddcreager.com and get all this information to help you grow a very deep relationship, because you can have a long-lasting relationship and marriage. And I just want to thank you again, Todd, for coming to Savvy Business Radio and sharing your gifts and talents today.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
Savvy Business Radio runs in syndication on 8 AM/FM stations nationwide, including iHeartRadio and 6 podcasting platforms. To find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or to become a guest and find out how we can help you get your message out in a bigger way, call 732-474-7375 or email Christina at savvybusinessradio.com.